mean, sometimes you've talked about worrying about players when they come home.
Question for Coach Calipari.
I worry about that, and as a matter of fact, I even forgot it until I looked at him on the bus last night, and I went, oh my gosh, we're coming back to Indiana. We're coming to Indianapolis where you, I said, oh my gosh. He was, he laughs about it, but it's a hard deal. The whole environment's hard for everybody, so he'll be fine.
Right here.
Nicole Auerbach, USA Today. For John and also for Bo, so much of college basketball history, there's programs built on Cornerstone, 4-year guys who build legacies. How, in the current state, is it possible for guys to do that in 1 year and leave such a lasting impact? What does it require to do that?
Coach Ryan.
John knows more about this than I do. I wouldn't know how to answer it. About 1-year guys and how they can leave a legacy by doing what they're doing, winning, garnering national attention, playing in Final Fours, at least to the semis. John and I were having a blast back here talking about Pennsylvania high school basketball. Yeah, so I mean, he would know more of what maybe he has seen over his tenure.
Coach Calipari.
It's changed. It's changed for all of us. It's changed from internet to draft lists to the gazillions in the NBA. It's all that stuff has made this different, our jobs different. I will tell you, we have universities here around this country, some of the top, that encourage genius and kids to move on and do their thing if they've stayed 1 or 2 years. As a matter of fact, they'll invest in them financially, and they'll tell them, if it doesn't go, you can come back. Your position in this campus will always be there. But I don't understand why it's a problem if it's the same with basketball players. These kids have a genius. Our jobs are to help them grow on and off the court, to help them become better men, to be prepared for society, yet they're chasing a dream, and they have a genius. And their genius isn't just athleticism or size, or there's no way you can be special at this sport unless you have the right kind of mind. And so, our kids, some have stayed 1 year, some have stayed 2, 3, some have stayed 4. We've graduated kids in 3 years. We've had 10 kids graduate. We'll have 4 on this year's team. That's in 6 years. We've had 2 of those kids graduate in 3 years. We've had a 3.0 grade point average for 5 straight years. Last semester was a 3.1. 13 out of 16 kids had a 3.0 or better. I mean, that may aggravate you to hear that, but that's the truth. We both have jobs and help our kids reach their dreams. Some of them can leave after a year, others can't. They stay.
Yeah,
Right.
Going back, what I agree totally with is the entertainers, the people who are talented in other areas that end up going and doing something and going out of school, thinking later to come back that maybe they'll get their degree, maybe they won't. You never hear about those people. It only comes up, and John has to face those type of questions a heck of a lot more than I do. But really, in college, if people are stepping away, I don't call it dropping out, they're stepping away to pursue their passion. So if it happens, I'm sure there's still a connection there later. Guys can take care of business. I can't tell you how many players on a different scale that played 4 years were pretty good, but not good enough for the NBA. A lot of them have like 8 credits, 15 credits, 20-some credits left to go. At Wisconsin, you cannot take classes, paper classes, and these other type of classes. You have to be in the classroom for the majority of your major. So it's 2-semester sport, so when they play professionally overseas, I got a ton of guys who cannot get their degree until they are finished with their professional contracts. So they're hanging out there with maybe a semester to go. So people would say, oh, well, they didn't finish college. Well, some of them have played for 10 years, 8 years, 5 years professionally. And as soon as they're done with a professional contract, because you have to show that for your APR, then then they start to count again. But the federal graduation rate is 6 years from the time you start. And the really neat part for someone like me is to see these guys chasing their dream, getting a paycheck, and getting paid pretty well overseas, and then come back and then finish their degrees. So I didn't know if you were referring to like why people come in and leave or whatever. My guys are leaving in a different sense, more so than John's guys.
Right here in front.
Gennaro Armis with the Associated Press. Coach Ryan, with the amount of with the amount of fun that your team seems to be having this year, how did that personality, the chemistry of those guys, how did that develop? And are they looser this year compared to last year as well?
Question for Coach Ryan.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I know how I'm perceived by some people as I'm actually a pretty funny guy.
No, you're not. You're mean.
I'm a serious guy, but I also know what the other side is like. And as far as understanding that this is a lifetime experience in a small time frame of 4 years, 3, whatever the years are, and you may as well enjoy it with the personalities that are there. And you can either try to stifle certain things, or you can feed to certain things, you can enjoy certain things. But the fun that our guys have is all about their relationships and the things that they're interested in, the things they're competitive about. They have more fun with the bragging rights of video games, which is why I did the thing I did the other day. I made a statement that I was the pinball wizard of the state of Pennsylvania in the 60s, and to elicit one thing. Do you know how many of my buddies and how many guys have said, wait a minute, you weren't that good. I was better than you. When do you want to play again? So it did exactly what I wanted it to do. Just what these guys are doing when they get into their needling about who's the best video games guy. And so they have their fun, but believe me, when they get on the practice court and they're looking at film or they're playing in the games, they understand what competition is about.
Right here.
Tom Oates, Wisconsin State Journal. John, do you find with this whole one-and-done thing that the criticism is abating a little bit, either as time goes by or maybe other programs adopt the same philosophy?
Coach Calipari.
It's just a different era. We're dealing with things in a different way, and you just have to. We all are. Whether we're me or Bo, if Bo has a guy that after a year is going to be a lottery pick, Bo's going to tell him, go for it. You got to do it. We're all in the same thing. And you don't know when you recruit a kid whether he's going to leave after a year. You don't know. I mean, you just coach them, and then they make a decision what they want to do. And we just try to make sure we make this about the kids. Now, the reason things are different, 20 years ago, NBA contracts were $125,000. Now, if you're a top 10 pick, it's $25 million. Your next contract may be $80 million. That's $100 million. It's different. We have to respect that. We have to respect these kids' genius. And I think Bo does, I do. We're just trying to develop young people. And I think people are looking at it and saying, one, we have great kids. Whether they chase their dream or not doesn't make them good or bad. We have great kids. The second thing is our kids are connected. Anyone that knows any of our players that are in the NBA, not in the NBA, they are connected, whether they stayed 1 year, 2 years, 3. We are family, and they know that. They stay in touch. They text. We talk to them. I'll go to games. They'll come in for watching games, and it's just different. And I think everybody's now looking at this saying, it's not my rule. Matter of fact, it's not the NCAA's rule. This is a rule between the NBA and the Players Association. And it's something that we can deal with in a way, let's just worry about me as a coach in my program. I'm not worried about them. And get them to stay. Force them to stay. Don't play them as much at the end of their year. So they got to stay. Or you let them run and make a decision on what they want to do. They don't always make the right decision now. Like sometimes they should stay and they choose to leave. Well, you got to live with that too, because it's their life, not my life.
Tom, can I add? Am I allowed to chime
Yes, go
in
ahead.
on that?
Go ahead, Coach.
Nigel Hayes, after he said he was coming to Wisconsin, and you can ask him this, said, Coach, now if I'm the player of the year my freshman year and I decide to go pro, is that okay with you? That's
No,
when
you're
I
staying.
knew I had a young man that, are you serious, Nigel? I just said, hey, sure. I have no problem with that. And did I know how good he was going to become? No, but he wasn't MVP his first year. But, you know, by the time he's finished, he might be pretty good. But that's his sense of humor. When I was asked about how our guys, the camaraderie, the fun they have, Nigel's one of the leaders in there.
Right here.
Kyle Tucker, Courier Journal, down here in the middle. What has it been like to watch Willie grow up personally as a player, and for you, what does it mean to see him? He's going to sit up there on that stage here in a few minutes after not being able to experience the Final Four fully last year.
Question for Coach
I had the
Calipari.
veterans come to my office before we left, tell them how proud I am of them. And I looked at Willie, and I said, can you imagine, Willie? I said, tell these guys where I saw you play in an AAU game. And he said, I don't want to remember. I said, how many points did you get in that AAU game? He got 2. And the guy who was guarding was like 6'4", or who was guarding him. He has come so far as a player, but more importantly as a person. He came in saying, you know what, I don't like academics. I'm going to do what you're making me do. He and I became a book club members together, and I made him read books, and he and I would discuss the books. And one of the things he said last year why he wanted to stay is I'm enjoying school. Well, that's what we're supposed to be about. This is about the love of learning, the love of reading, getting them to understand an educated man doesn't get robbed or fooled. If you think you're just coming here and then you're going to go get all kind of money, you'll be broke. You educate yourself. You understand how to read contracts. Those are things for these kids that I'm most proud of. And Willie now is going into his junior year. Here's a kid that averages under double figures and is one of the top players in the country because he's that selfless, is about his team, and it's a good part of what we do to see that kind of growth.
Right here. Jerry.
Jerry Tipton, Lexington Herald Leader. For both of you guys, how good is the overall talent on the 4 teams here, and how much is there sort of a pick-your-poison element in trying to design your defenses to stop all the players?
Coach Ryan.
Well, we played Michigan State and we played Duke. We played Kentucky our last game last year. What I can say about the talent is there's a lot of, there's shooters, there's ball handlers, there's bigs, I mean, you can go from every aspect of the game of basketball and look at these 4 teams. There are guys who are just blue-collar guys that are there to rebound and play defense. There are guys that are there to score. There are guys there that can kill you in the post. There's guys defensively that can lock you down. I would say in this Final Four, having played all the teams within the past year, that there's a little bit of everything, and it's at a very high level.
Coach Calipari.
I think, you know, that because the talent level is what it is, I think we're all just worried about our own teams playing well. I just want my team. We're not going to control what Wisconsin does. They're going to play the way they play. We're going to play. I just hope my team plays well. And I think if you talk to all 4 coaches, when you say, Bo, we're just, I mean, we're stopping Wisconsin. We ain't stopping Wisconsin. I just hope my team plays well. And then we'll see how it plays out.
Over here.
Zach Braziller, New York Post. In the Final Four game last year, Kaminsky struggled a little bit. Cal, what did you guys do against him so well? And can you use what you did last year at all Saturday?
Well, we didn't have Willie. You know, Marcus Lee played him some. I mean, we really played him with a bunch of different guys. I don't think there was one thing that we did. He missed some shots that he normally makes. You know, just looking at it, because I glanced at it again just to make sure, what did we do? You know, played like we always play. Dakari Johnson played him a lot in that game, and Marcus Lee was the other. I even think we put, I don't know if we put any smaller guys on him. I can't remember, but we know how good he is. I just saw him out in the hallway, and I said, look, I'm so tired of looking at your tape right now. And what I said to Bo in the back, we were laughing, how much better he's gotten in over a 2-year period is like almost scary, like holy cow. He and Decker both. I mean, they both got a swagger about them. They both have a high belief in themselves and their team. And they know how they're going to play. This is who we are. They do it.
Right here.
This is for both you folks. This is Will Hobson, Washington Post. This year's tournament is worth somewhere north of $700 million in television revenue for the NCAA. And by making the Final Four, both your squads have earned somewhere between $8 and $9 million for your conferences, which will go back to your departments to cover your costs, ostensibly part of your salaries. How much of that money, or should any of that money, do you think, go directly to your players?
Coach Calipari, you start.
Well, I think it's taken the NCAA 30, 40 years, but they're beginning to change now. I mean, right now we brought parents to the Final Four for the first time. My opinion, which I don't give very often, I keep my opinions to myself, but in this case I'll tell you, my opinion is the parents should come to every round. Why should only the parents come to the final round? What about the other 64 teams that played in this? Why wouldn't their parents enjoy being with them? We changed the food policy. We now can feed our kids unfettered. Now, you won't believe this, we're not going to try to make them fat. We're not going to try to feed them too much, but we're going to feed them. And we're going to make it as healthy as we can, because that's what we're doing. I think what we're doing with the stipends, I think we now have to move to paying for their insurance. These kids have to pay their own disability insurance. It encourages them to leave early. Would you really want to have a $100,000 debt that you have to pay back because you were paying for your own disability insurance? We should pay that. If a kid stays more than 1 year, maybe the NBA or someone else should pay for the loss of value. You decide to stay longer, we'll insure you. Someone else to encourage them to stay in school, if that's what they choose to do, so they're not forced. I think the NCAA right now is moving in the direction they need to move. It's a slow-moving boat. But it was for 40 years, this is the way it is, and we're not changing, to where now they've been forced to move in the direction of these young people, and I think they've done a pretty good job here over the last year.
Coach Ryan.
Well, I know there has been changes. I've been on the board of the NABC. I've lost track of the number, but I'm now on the executive committee, which means I'm getting close to being the president of the Coaches Association. Cal's on the board now. We've been we've been discussing this for a long time about, even in the Big Ten tournament, parking in Chicago for the parents, driving to games. For the NCAA tournament, you gave the figures. I don't know the figures. You gave the figures. We've been asking for help for the parents to get to the games in the NCAA tournament. At least for the finals is where we started, for the Final Four. But then the more we talked about it, it's like for the whole NCAA tournament, that parents should have some stipend. And isn't it amazing that the men's basketball tournament and men's basketball period pays 90-some% of the NCAA's budget expenses, and football had a championship game. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't the parents get taken care of to go see their kids play in the football championship game? Somebody told me that, but I never had it verified. But John, if you're shaking your head and Hoops is agreeing with you, I'm not sure if I'm right. No. But, okay, what I'm getting at is all of a sudden football goes to a championship game and yeah, and for the men's Final Four, we're going to take care of the parents for that too. Oh, well, thank you. That was awfully nice, but we think it should be for more. And we've even in our own conference been trying to lobby for expenses for parents coming to the Big Ten tournament. Because it isn't just going to be in the Midwest, it's going to be on the East Coast now. So right in our own conference, which makes money from the Big Ten tournament, that parents should get some help, some type of stipend.
The last question right here.
Jesse Temple, Fox Sports Wisconsin. This is for Bo. John just talked about how much growth Frank has had in the last couple of years. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, have you coached many guys that have grown as much as Frank has from start to finish when you got him to where he is now?
Coach Ryan.
No, not someone who and it's not the finish, because Frank is still getting better. And as soon as he gets some good coaching when he's out of college, he'll be really good. But he's worked at every drill. He's worked at everything we've given him. He's looked at the films. He's very astute when it comes to picking up nuances of moves and using his body, positioning. So, and you know, his family background, there's athletes. His parents are very athletic, very smart. So we were getting a player who we knew was hungry and wanted to prove that he could get to be pretty good, and we tend to enjoy having those kind of guys around. And but for somebody to go to the level he has from start to finish, no, I've never had a player like that.
Thank you, coaches.
Thanks.